Over the next few minutes, we'll walk through the download and setup of a SIP user agent, and we'll make our first peer-to-peer SIP call. More importantly, we'll look at the SIP messages exchanged during the call, both SIP requests and SIP responses. By the time you've mastered this module, you'll know the sequence of messages in a peer-to-peer call, and you'll know how to differentiate between requests and responses in a SIP call log. Okay, let's download a software user agent to your computer. There's lots to choose from: Linphone, Xlite, Counterpath. They all adhere to the same SIP spec, so should all work just fine. Mind you, it's convenient to run 2 instances on your machine at the same time and set up calls between them. Just beware that with some, you can only have 1 instance running at a time. So if you want to do everything from your laptop, be sure to choose one that will run multiple instances. I like the MJUA from MJSIP. In fact, I'll be using it throughout these modules. If you already have a preferred user agent, then load it up and fast forward 30 seconds or so while the rest of us set up the MJ user agent. Otherwise, go to mjsip.org to begin the download. Now, it's just a zip file, so when you've got it, go ahead and unzip it somewhere handy on your machine. By the way, there's also a link to our user agent quick start guide, just in case it's useful for you. With the user agent file unzipped, open a command prompt and change directory to the folder containing the uaw.bat. Once there, execute uaw.bat with the -f parameter and point to the config/a.cfg. That's Alice's config file. See here how it's preset with her details, her display name, her username, the listening port for SIP messages, and so on. And that's it. I'll enter. And great. SIP Alice at your IP address, port 5070, is up and running. Let's launch a second instance for Bob. Open another command prompt, cd to the same folder, and again execute uaw.bat -f. This time pointing to config/b.cfg. That's Bob's config file. Here's his display name, his username, listening port, and so on. Now, obviously, we can change the names, the ports, and all the config data as we like, but for now, we'll settle with Alice and Bob. And enter. And Bob's user agent launches just fine. Good, we're ready to make our first call. I'll go to Alice's user agent and type Bob's address, sip:"bob at Bob's IP address, Bob's port 5080. The same address I see here in Bob's user agent, and click dial. And immediately Bob's phone rings, showing an incoming call from Alice. I'll accept, and as you can hear, we're connected. The audio's being encoded and media packets are exchanged. Now to terminate the call, I'll hang up, and the call is terminated. Great. Now that we've made a call, the next task is to study the SIP messages that set up the call. Now take a look inside the log folder. There's a messages.log for Alice's user agent on port 5070 and a messages.log for Bob's user agent on port 5080. Every SIP message sent from or received by each user agent is copied into the log for reference. The first message in Alice's log is an invite addressed to SIP Bob at Bob's IP address and port, the same address we dialed a moment ago. Now, most user agents prepend each message with a timestamp and a sent or received marker that tells us if the message is outgoing or incoming. Over in Bob's log, we see the same invite, received just milliseconds later. What next? Well, Bob's user agent sends back a 100 trying, received moments later at Alice's user agent. How about you spend a minute or so now familiarizing yourself with the call log and the messages inside it. Take a piece of paper and draw 2 vertical lines that represent the 2 user agents, then plot the flow of SIP messages between them, representing each message with a labeled arrow. The first is an invite from Alice to Bob, and the second is a 100 trying from Bob to Alice. You should find 7 SIP messages altogether. Now, 3 of the messages are going to be SIP requests, and 4 are going to be SIP responses. The question is, how do we tell the difference? As you study the logs, look for a rule to distinguish them, and then label each message accordingly. Go ahead and plot the 7 messages and find the rule, and then press play when you're ready. We'll then run through things together. The call was initiated by Alice's user agent through the dispatch of an invite. Bob's user agent then responded with a 100 trying, and almost immediately again with a 180 ringing. Then when Bob accepted the call, his user agent sent back a 200 OK, prompting Alice's user agent to send back an ACK. Straight away, the 2 user agents then begin exchanging media packets, and the session is established. Later, when one party hangs up, a bye is sent, prompting an immediate 200 OK. Now, this simple 7-message exchange is something you're going to need to know off by heart. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with it and learn it now. We'll then spend the next few hours unpicking these messages and learning what they do and why we need them and understanding their content. And how about the rule to distinguish requests from responses? Well, requests always begin with a method type followed by a request URI address, and responses always feature a status code and a reason phrase in the start line.